Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ergi Gumusaneli.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank all of our sponsors and organizers. This event has been more than a year in the making. There are some amazing people that have come together to make this event happen. So I want to start off with a story. So husband and wife go to marriage counseling. And I don't know if you've heard this one before. So they've been doing so well, they come across a genie bottle, and the genie comes out of the bottle and says, you guys have been working really hard. I want to give each of you one wish. You heard this? My wife hates this joke, by the way. I'm gonna get it. So my wife and I actually did go to a marriage conference once. This is a true story. And I realized that I was actually a very good husband because I was annoying her so much. See, and men, if you are annoying your women, your wives, over and over again, this is actually a very good sign because that means she cares. This is what I learned. But anyway, I think the point is just love your wives and do the best that you can. You don't have to understand them. Genie says, hey, I'm going to give you each one wish. And he goes to the wife and he says, what would you like? And she says, I've always wanted a big diamond ring. And there it is. Beautiful 5-carat diamond ring. What do you think about that? Oh, I love it. And he goes to the genie goes to the husband and says, what would you like? And he says, well, you know, when we got married, I always wanted to take my wife to Hawaii, but I'm afraid of planes and I'm afraid of boats. Can you build a bridge out to Hawaii? It's a bridge to Hawaii. Wow, that's a lot of concrete, and you have to put gas stations. Is there something else that you would like? And he says, you know, I really love my wife that much. Could you teach me to understand women? And the genie says, so about that bridge, do you want that to be a 2-lane bridge or a 4-lane bridge? We're gonna have a great show today. Great food, good fun, and incredible music, and some very interesting speakers. I've had an opportunity to talk with them, and many of them today already. I want to talk about 2 things. One is demystifying and destigmatizing mental health, and the other one is several case examples of turning a perceived weakness into a strength. Not only people who are going through something exceptional, and they may feel broken. You're not, you're unbroken, but you could actually turn that unbrokenness into a superpower. And I hope I can convince you of that today. What is stigma? I had to look this up. And this is pretty radical. Stigma is the mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. Ooh. Or stigma is a visible sign or characteristic of a disease. So why is mental health a stigma? And I think I understand part of it, and the medical model has something to do with it. Stigma, I think, comes from diagnosing, labeling, symptoms, and the medical model is based on a disease model. And I think this is seen in any medical record that you see. If someone comes in to the clinic with depression, that becomes part of their medical chart. You don't see a person with a story, you see a 44-year-old person with depression. And that's the first thing that a person will see on a medical chart. And I'm not sure that that's the best way to go about talking and understanding mental health. Is there a different way? I think there is. And I've often thought about what are the building blocks of good emotional health. If you take your kids and entrust that they will learn at school, They're going to get the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're going to learn science and the arts. But what about emotional health? What are we arming our teachers with? What are we arming our parents with to teach young people and mature people the building blocks of good emotional health? Do we do it? I don't think we do a very good job at that. And so I wanted to come up with an idea that instead of listing symptoms and going about it with the traditional medical model, maybe there is a different way to do it. And I had inspiration. I had inspiration with my wife, actually. She said, carpe diem, seize the day. It's Latin, carpe diem. The C is confidence. Confidence is not born. It's not something that you have on the inside that you just get through osmosis. Confidence comes from competence. It comes from practicing something and becoming very proficient at it. Malcolm Gladwell called this the 10,000 hour rule. You work at something for 10,000 hours. So if you're working at it about 40 hours a week, it'll take you near a decade to figure this out, to become competent at something. That's how you develop your confidence. It comes from practice. It comes from repetition. C is confidence. A is accountability. Who are you accountable to? Are you accountable to your friends, your family, God? You have to be accountable to something or someone or something bigger than yourself to establish a foundation to become the best person you're meant to be. A is accountability. R is relationships. Any one of us can say, show me your friends, and I will tell you everything I need to know about you. Hang out with the turkeys, that's what you'll be. It'll be the elevator effect. You're just going to be like the turkeys. Hang out with the eagles and the spaceships. It's a metaphor. No one hangs out with a spaceship. It's the elevator effect. You're going to become a better version of who you're meant to be. R is relationships. P is purpose. This one is an important one. And I come across many people, they're disgruntled and they're melancholic. They say, I don't have a purpose in life. What's my purpose in life? And I think the question needs to be reframed, or we need to think about what purpose actually is. Purpose is not what you do. It's not what you do for a living. The purpose is your why. Why are you doing this? Well, I'm a service-oriented person, and I care about people, so I want to help them in some way. That's why somebody might become a police officer or public servant. P is purpose. And the E is eagerness. The eagerness is that excitement, the energy, the openness to try new things. Nobody wants to go through life just doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's very bland. E is eagerness. We've come up with this mnemonic, carpe diem, to think about these elements, and you could expand this to so many other things anyways. This is just something that was catchy and something that I was very rememberable. But if you think about human existence in this way, instead of the way the medical model teaches you to think about depression, which is, how's your sleep? What's your interest? Are you feeling guilty about things? How's your energy? What's your concentration like? How's your appetite? Are you feeling slow? We've all felt these things. That means we're all depressed. I think it's an unfair way to think about it. I think we need to humanize the symptoms. It took me over 20 years to deprogram myself from thinking about how to approach people who were coming to me for help. That there are actually gifts hidden within human suffering. And if you can see these gifts, you'll view what we call mental illness in a different way. So in our practice, we take a whole person approach right here at Ponderosa Family Care. And the point was to take the stigma out of bringing mental health care and bring in comfort and familiarity. What Ponderosa Family Care allows us to do is deliver mental health care in a way that's humanizing. And I'd like to give you 3 stories. No big deal. How many of you know a child or anybody who has ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? I think everybody's got their hands up. Well, I'll tell you something. That little boy that you're thinking about, it could be a girl too. It could be a girl too. It's usually a boy though, let's not kid ourselves, okay? But that little person that you're thinking about is a genius. Let me repeat that. That little person you're thinking about is a genius. And it's thought that Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein, many prominent business leaders, mothers, fathers, have ADHD. Many successful people have ADHD. ADHD is a very weird illness. It's actually a spectrum. 2 parts of the brain are affected. The first part is the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the regulator. It's kind of like the boss. It's like the super, okay? It's the regulator of our thoughts and our actions. It's thought that people who have ADHD don't have a very strong regulator. They kind of have a very hands-off boss, very laissez-faire, lackadaisical. Do whatever you want. I'm not gonna stop you. So it runs across the room. That's okay, it's okay. Goes around circles in the restaurant. That's okay. Well, that's how their brains are wired. There is a benefit to this. It drives teachers crazy in the classroom, drives parents crazy. Seems like you have to just give them a bunch of sugar and put an iPad in front of them to settle them down. Nobody's done that. There's actually a benefit. It's a surprising benefit. People with ADHD are extremely creative, off the charts creative. Remember, they don't have that regulator, that boss, pounding that creativity out of them. They are so creative, in fact, that some of the best inventors of all time have ADHD. There's a second part of the brain that's affected with ADHD, and that's the basal ganglia. And the basal ganglia is a little deeper. The prefrontal cortex is right here. The basal ganglia is deeper in the brain. And this part is involved in our reward system and our emotional systems. So if you're going to Disneyland, a person with ADHD isn't going to go on the Teacups or the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. They're going to go to Space Mountain all day long until you're tired, till midnight, and then they're going to want to do it again the next day. What would excite a normal person, forgive me, what would excite a person who doesn't have ADHD is not going to do it for that person with ADHD. So what you have is you have a person who is supercharged on excitement and extremely creative. If you ask me, that's a superpower. There's actually a gift in that, and people who struggle with ADHD don't fit within the norm. I have ADHD. How many of you have heard of social anxiety? How many of you know somebody that has social anxiety? Social anxiety is people who are self-conscious around people. They have increased heart rate, increased breathing, sweaty palms, dizziness, trembling. It gets so bad that they can have an upset stomach and even pass out. What you may not have heard of is the term coined highly sensitive person, or HSPs. HSPs are a term coined by a psychologist by the name of Dr. Elaine Aron. And 30% of the population actually have this gift of HSPs, being a highly sensitive person. I'm not talking about the person that goes and watches the Titanic and then cries afterwards. Okay? A highly sensitive person is like a supercharged radar. They could pick up on energies. They know if you're having a bad day by just walking in the door. They have this innate sense of feeling. They also pick up quickly on pain, crowds, and noise. So HSPs don't like to be in crowded spaces. HSPs are more overwhelmed than others. And actually, most people with social anxiety have HSP. There's a few things about HSPs, highly sensitive persons. They're extremely loyal. You want them to be with you in that foxhole. They are highly creative. They are extremely intuitive and very empathetic. If you could think of a scenario of a person walking in and they come across someone who's a little less than honorable, kind of a sketchy person, they say, I felt really uncomfortable there. You say, well, what did they say? They didn't say anything. I just knew I had to get out of there. This is that most human communication is nonverbal. HSPs are very adept at picking up on this information. So the next time you meet someone who has social anxiety, ask yourself, well, are you an HSP? This is a very unique gift. Okay, so I've talked about ADHD and I've talked about social anxiety, and that's like junior varsity stuff. You say, well, let's talk about something real, doc. Okay. Well, let's talk about some serious stuff. How about depression? Depression is the loneliest, darkest, deepest club that there is. And people feel isolated when they're extremely depressed. It takes courage to help somebody else, but it takes an extraordinary amount of courage for someone with depression to say, hey, you know, I think I'm struggling with this. I need some help. Most people with depression bottle it in and they isolate. Sometimes it takes an HSP to figure it out, to say, hey, you know what? This person is dealing with depression. Well, you say, well, what are the advantages of being depressed? Well, none in the moment, none that I could think of. However, ask anyone who has been in the darkest of corners and the darkest of places and has come out of that. Are they stronger? Do they have more perspective? Are they more empathetic? It's a rite of passage. Actually, a person that struggles with depression and goes through it is having brain and spiritual changes. They're going through a metamorphosis. And there is something to be said about that. Ask anyone who's been through depression and you will notice humility, strength, stubbornness. And I mean stubbornness in a way of a very strong understanding of common sense and self-perseverance. So, let's try not to think about symptoms, diagnoses, labels, and all these other things that the medical model has kind of ingrained in us, not just as medical providers, but in all of us, permeating through humanity. Carpe diem. Let's ask about a person's confidence and help build them up. Accountability. Help people to become accountable. They'll gain so much self-esteem. Relationships. Let's encourage each other to have positive relationships, the type of relationships that we would want for ourselves and our children. Purpose. Help people find their purpose in life. And eagerness. Because let's be open to new things. Life will be much more enjoyable with that. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope all of you really enjoy this symposium, and God bless you all. Thank you.